Okay, folks, the Dallas Cowboys season is over and they are no longer playing football games, but it's not going to stop us from talking about them because really that's what the Cowboys do best. They talk a lot. For Dallas Cowboys Overtime, I am Fort Worth Star-Telegram sports columnist Mac Engel, and I'm joined by Mr. Clarence Chill Hill. The NFL playoffs have one game remaining. That is the Super Bowl. And I swear to God, Clarence, I think we do this every year. We look at the Super Bowl matchup and we think, how can the Cowboys use whatever team, Cardinals, Colts, Patriots, Eagles, name the franchise, how can they use their team as a model or an inspiration of hope? So this time next year, we're not talking about the Cowboys season and their offseason preparation, but getting ready for another game. The Super Bowl matchup, I can't believe it. My Cincinnati Bengals, I got to do this. My Cincinnati Bengals, this jersey's from high school, by the way, will be playing.
And you can still wear it. Look at you.
Damn right. You don't think I'm not going to be bragging about that?
Yeah.
I might have been on the Husky side when I was a freshman in high school. Clarence, we don't need to talk about that.
So you weigh less now than you did in high school?
Pardon?
You weigh less now than you did in high school?
Proportionally, I think I'm in much better shape than I was in high school. We can talk about that later. But the Bengals will go to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1988, and they're going to play the LA Rams. Now, how the teams got here couldn't have been any more different. The LA Rams decided to do something that we normally don't see in the NFL, and they went all in, and they sort of took an NBA approach by trading a bunch of draft picks and assets to get top-tier players at a whole host of different positions, starting with the quarterback in Matt Stafford. This is his first season there. He'd been with the Lions for a long time. In the offseason, the Rams traded Jared Goff, a former number one overall pick, who got them to the Super Bowl a few years ago, to Detroit in exchange for Stafford. Then they make a trade for Jalen Ramsey. They had done that before with Jacksonville. Then they make a trade to get Von Miller from Denver earlier this season. And they go out and they get Odell Beckham Jr. The Bengals, meanwhile, did it the old-fashioned way. They did it through the draft. They hit on their number one overall pick and former LSU, not Ohio State quarterback Joe Burrow, and they signed some guys, some second-tier free agents in the offseason. Clarence, when you look at what the Cowboys have ahead of them, and the fact that they have an owner who is all in as all in can be, or has been historically, what path is more realistic for them to take? The way the Bengals did it or the Rams just did?
Well, I mean, I think that the Cowboys are trying to do it the way the Rams did it. You know, you watch them in free agency, they don't trade draft assets. You know, they believe the draft is important and they refuse to go all in on free agency. We every year we go into free agency, we talk about them nickel and dime free agents and shopping at, you know, Walmart or shopping at, you know, the thrift store in free agency. You know, they believe in building through the draft. And the thing that, you know, obviously helped Cincinnati in how they've done it, because they got a quarterback on a rookie contract and they can still add players. You know, the funny thing is Cincinnati has a horrible offensive line. They did nothing to improve their offensive line. They wouldn't draft a receiver in, you know, first round pick last year instead of going offensive line. When everybody thought you got to get a left tackle, you got to protect the quarterback. Well, they wouldn't got Jamar Chase, and you know, and obviously getting a receiver to go with the quarterback has been wildly successful for them. But you know, then they signed some marginal guys, some kind of bargain basement guys in free agency. They added Cheeto Woozy, former Cowboy cornerback, in free agency. Guys like that to help, you know, fill out their team. But the bottom line is this: whether you go the Rams model or whether you go the 49ers model, your players got to show up and play.
You'd think that would help. That would help.
You know, and that's one thing that has happened for both teams. They showed up and played. What also true, you know, as we go back in the Bengals one of the least penalized teams in the league.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, you know, hurt yourself. You listen, and Dak Prescott had his butt kicked, you know, 7 days since, you know, every day, you know, since, you know, the 49ers game. But tell me how Dak Prescott would look at the team in that 14 penalties.
You have to go back, Clarence, to at least 3 games where they committed so many penalties and think if they reduce that number by half, you're going to get penalized in a game. But if they reduced, especially that 49ers loss, if you reduce that number by a half, you probably win the game.
Yeah.
The other one that jumps off the page is the Cardinals game. And the Bengals are, I'm sorry, the Bengals are not that good. They had Eli Apple, former first-round pick. The Giants didn't want a corner. He was making plays, stopping Tyreek Hill on a goal line play at the end of the first half to stop them from
Let's just
scoring.
be honest. Let's go right there. The Chiefs lost that game more than the Bengals won. And sometimes you have to have luck. And I think that a lot of people are comparing the Bengals run to the Giants. Well, they were comparing the 49ers run to the Giants run. But sometimes you have to have luck. I mean, what the Chiefs did at the end of the first half, you talk about that play, that was about the Chiefs because that was easy 3 points.
That was the most arrogant play. I haven't seen an arrogant. I don't recall seeing a play call that arrogant since Florida State beat Nebraska in the national championship game when Charlie Ward was the quarterback, when the team just thought, don't worry, we'll get these points later. Don't worry. But if we don't get it, it's no big deal. We'll be back down there again.
And those 3 points, they're kicking a field goal to win the game at the end of the game. What Patrick Mahomes did at the end of the first half, and you can call it arrogance of play calling, but if the play's not there, throw the ball in the ground and kick the field goal. It was third down. There was no reason to do the decision he made at the end of that half and at the end of that game. It looked like, let's be honest, you've been talking about Tech. It looked like the Texas Tech Patrick Mahomes and not the Kansas City Chiefs Patrick Mahomes.
No, you're right.
He had to do everything
because there were a lot of
and
plays
put everything on his back.
He did, and there were a lot of plays he made. Just run around. And that's the NFL. That's football. If you got a guy who can do it, then do it. But when it looks bad and it goes south, then you're like, "Ooh, brother, this doesn't look very good." Joe Burrow is special.
No, he is special, but he didn't have a great game in the championship in that game.
I don't know, Clint.
He threw interception in the fourth quarter.
He did.
But what the difference in the second half was that defense.
The defense.
The Cheeto Awuzis and the Eli Apples and those guys, his quarterback coming making the safety making a play. No, that was the difference. I mean, this Kansas City offense scored nothing.
Scored 3 points, and twice Cincinnati in like the last month shut out Kansas City or limited them to 3 points.
So what I'm saying is you need good players to show up. You also need good fortune. That's all part of it. It's in the same way with the Rams. I mean, the Rams pushed all their chips in, but the 49ers had to lead the fourth quarter. The 49ers spit the bit as well. And listen, we love Matt Stafford around here from Dallas, Highland Park. He's finally getting that muck off his back. But he threw an awful interception that wasn't.
Oh, my gosh.
We'll be seeing a different tune around here about Matt Stafford and comparing him to this same old Detroit Matt Stafford. If the defensive back or the safety for the 49ers could catch. He can't catch a cold butt naked in Alaska, okay? I don't understand it. So you need to commit. You need to put your chips in. You need to draft well. You need to choose the right players. Players need to play, but you also need some good fortune.
Clarence, real quick before we move on to the next subject, it would seem to me that the Cowboys have two completely polar different opposites in terms of their management's style and preferences. You have the one guy who would go for it on 4th and 99 from his own one in Jerry Jones, because he believes if you're going to win big, you got to do some bold things. That's what Jerry wants to do. We have seen in the past when Jerry is all in, trading a lot for Roy Williams, trading for Joey Galloway and other moves, right?
Right.
And then we have Steven, his son, and the heir to the GM role, who is far more conservative, who would probably tend to go the way the Bengals do. He's not as cheap as Mike Brown. Nobody's cheap as Mike Brown, the primary owner of the Bengals. But in terms of the way the Rams did it and the way the Cowboys do it, I don't see Stephen Jones embracing the way the Rams built their team.
No, he won't, and he hasn't. And I know I've clamored in the offseason for them to go and get a difference maker. And obviously they finally drafted one on defense in Michael Parsons, but you need to go get somebody that's going to help this team. I mean, you look at for the life of me, you started in 2016 when Dak came here. The next year with Dak and Zeke, they just ran it back. They didn't really add any playmakers to the program. And you got to add somebody to help them. You can't think that these guys are just going to be able to carry what you have. And as they go into this offseason again, you have some decisions to make on free agents. and you're gonna it's not gonna be cheap 1-year deals anymore, especially for a guy like Jaron Kearse, who you hit on, who now is going to command a little money. You're going
How
to have
about
to
Randy
pay
Gregory?
to keep some of those guys. So there's some huge decisions to make. I think that because the cap has gone up, they can manage them. Certainly, they can do some things, but they certainly have some huge decisions to make, and it's going to be more again Steven doing it his way, trying to manage the cap to keep the Cowboys competitive. The thing about it is the Cowboys want to always stay competitive. Okay, so they always don't want to be over their skis to a certain extent with the cap, so they can go down. But staying competitive and winning the division, but never getting to the top, is that the answer?
I don't know, because there is another level of low. And the worst thing from an NFL standpoint, if you're a fan standpoint, and I'm wearing this jersey, the worst thing that can happen is the Bengals winning, because that management didn't care. They were going to do it the way they did it, in cheap and low ball, and they just fell into a great player, and they got really, really hot. And credit them, but the way they did it is not good. It's like the way the Texans are trying to do it in a way. I don't see Dallas ever doing that. But I would say I don't think Dallas wants to commit to really being bad. And I don't
they
think
definitely don't want to commit to being bad.
No, there's no tanking in that organization.
He's not trying to go 1-15 again and start
no way
with the top pick.
All right, let's move on to another subject, and that is last week Jerry Jones called into the Dallas Cowboys flagship radio station 105.3 The Fan for an unscheduled appearance on the show on the station to clean up some loose ends that clearly he had a lot to do in creating, namely the job security of his head coach and Mike McCarthy. Since the season ended, Jerry really didn't want to talk about Mike McCarthy's status. And then it became even more complicated when Sean Payton retired from the New Orleans Saints. Then you had other interests in potentially defensive coordinator Dan Quinn leaving the Cowboys to accept a head coaching job, potentially in Denver, maybe with the New York Giants or other spots. In about a 48-hour window, Sean Payton says, yeah, the Cowboys are not one of the two teams that have contacted me. I don't want to coach this season. Dan Quinn takes himself out of the running, wink, wink, of any head coaching job. And then Jerry comes on the radio station and says, Mike McCarthy's here to stay. We're going to be good. Dan Quinn's going to be here for a long time. He turned down NFL head coaching jobs, and we're ready to go. Clarence, like you tweeted out, it's the season of lying, of Jerry's comments that he made on Friday, which created quite a stir. Which one do you believe, and which one do you say, yeah, I'm not buying that one?
There was so much to unpack, because the week before he was given several opportunities to endorse Mike McCarthy, and he refused to do so. And he claimed that after the fact that he didn't endorse Mike McCarthy because he was trying to keep Dan Quinn from going somewhere else, trying to keep teams off of Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was requested interviews from 6 teams. He interviewed with 5. I don't know how him not endorsing Mike McCarthy kept teams off of Dan Quinn. None of that makes any sense to me. And certainly, he was a finalist for at least 3 jobs. He turned down, and obviously 2 teams went away. I think there's some scuttlebutt that he could have had the Giants job if he wanted it. But Dan Quinn told us last year he wasn't taking any job. He was happy with the Cowboys, and certainly it was going to have to be the right situation. I think he wanted the Denver job. And certainly when he didn't get the Denver job and the Bears went to a different direction, he decided, I want to stay here. And certainly Jerry, I'm sure, enhanced his decision with some extra money and a new contract. But we know this is going to be the same situation next year. I mean, you can't guarantee he's going to be here for years to come. And you can't guarantee that we won't be doing the same Sean Payton tango dance next year if the Cowboys don't win. The upshot is this: whether it's Dan Quinn, whether it's Sean Payton, Mike McCarthy is going to next year on the hot seat with 2 giant shadows over both shoulders.
There's one. Clarence, hang on. I disagree with you about that. And let me tell you why. We've seen 2 other assistant coaches of the Dallas Cowboys since 2004 flirt seriously with other head coaching opportunities only to stay. Sean Payton in 2004, interviewed with the Raiders, had a chance at that job, didn't want to work for the Raiders for obvious reasons, namely Al Davis. Then Jason Garrett, after the 2007 season, He had an opportunity to be the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, thought this isn't the right time because everybody knew this was the job, the Dallas Cowboys, that was the job that he wanted, and it worked out. I don't think Dan Quinn is a shadow. I think Dan Quinn is an interim shadow. Sean Payton's a shadow. I don't think Dan Quinn coming back here is like Jason Garrett coming back here. Jason Garrett was essentially a son of Jerry Jones.
No, it's certainly
Dan Quinn ain't a son.
Yeah, no, and Dan Quinn's been a head coach before. It
right.
wasn't. It's several different things. Of course, I think Baltimore made the right decision. I think it worked out.
Think that worked out?
I think the Harbaugh thing worked out for Baltimore. But yeah, I mean, again, all I'm saying is we've turned Mike McCarthy into a sympathetic figure.
Have we?
Huh?
Do you really believe that?
I mean, you left him twisted in the wind. The guy goes 12-5. He didn't. The owner left him twisted in the wind, and now he goes to the next year with Super Bowl or bust tag on his label. People are already talking about Sean Payton should be the coach and would be the coach now if he wanted to coach. And if they don't get to a championship game, they're going to fire for Mike McCarthy. For Sean Payton next year. I mean, he can't win, can he?
I know what you're saying. And I just think in this particular case, in this particular job, there are no sympathetic figures. He's paid north of $5 million a year. If he gets fired, he's going to be guaranteed to walk out the door with more than $10 million in the bank. I don't have a lot of sympathy for those guys. He knew what he was getting into, right? Dave Campo, yeah, okay. He might have been slightly sympathetic, maybe, kind of, when he was the head coach of the Cowboys. Bill Parcells wasn't. Wade Phillips wasn't. Jason Garrett sure as hell wasn't. And neither is this guy. He knew, Clarence, you said it last week on this, he knew what he was getting into.
No, I understand that. He knew what he was getting into. And I hear you. I'm just saying that he deserved better than what he's had to deal with this last week.
I agree with you.
That's all I'm saying.
And I can't, it's patently absurd we're having, that this has become a narrative for all the reasons that you just mentioned. That he had a healthy Dak Prescott for 1 year. They went 12-5. They won the division. They had a home playoff game. Did they spit the bet? Absolutely. They lost to a pretty good team, but they could have won the game. And there's a lot of reasons why they didn't. But to think that we're going to run this guy out of town after his second season and first full season with a starting quarterback is preposterous. Yeah, but on brand for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, no doubt. That's part of it. And the thing about it is just what have we been talking about? What's the nation been talking about for 2 weeks? Listen. Good publicity, bad publicity. Just spell my name right. Keep talking about the Cowboys. That's on brand for Jerry Jones.
Speaking of Dak Prescott, this week he made the, announcement that he does not want to play in the Pro Bowl. He had an opportunity to participate in the Pro Bowl, which will be in Las Vegas this year, because that's a really good idea. He decided not to do it to let his body heal. Clarence, is this an example of a player who has been to the Pro Bowl before and really just doesn't want to do it anymore because it's not in Hawaii, it's not a free trip to Hawaii? Or is this a case of a guy who probably is far more injured and banged up than he will tell us or admit?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter than the former. I mean, I think that, whether you want to play in the game, there's not, a game that exerts a lot of energy, but you want the recognition.
Yeah.
So at the end of your career, you're going to want the record. He's been to the Pro Bowl twice.
Yeah.
When you're stacking up your ledger and your resume at the end of your career, you're going to want these. And even these replacement nominations count.
Yep. They take it too.
You want the recognition. I think that if things would have ended differently, Dak would have gone and accepted the opportunity to play in the Pro Bowl, replace Tom Brady and play in the Pro Bowl. The situation right now is how the season ended. He's still burned by the not the Arizona game, but the 49ers game. And not just how he played, but also how it ended in his comments after the game and the negativity he got, for criticizing officials. I certainly don't think he wants to answer those questions about the 22 seconds, not the 22 seconds, but the 14 seconds. And then the comments about the officials. You at the Pro Bowl, you with the media, it's going to be brought up. You want to talk about that. And then there's the issue of his injuries and his health. He wants to rest. And, he spent all of last season rehabbing. He didn't really have an off season. He spent all of last offseason rehabbing. And that was his focus. Then he went into the season and he suffered an injury, suffered the calf injury. And I don't care what anyone said, what the Cowboys says, he was not the same player after the calf injury. So it makes sense for him to want to rest and get recharged and do all the other stuff and nurse some of his injuries back to health and also just step away for a second.
All right, last subject we're going to talk about here on Dallas Cowboys Overtime. There are 2 NFL games remaining. One matters, the other one doesn't. The one that doesn't is the aforementioned Pro Bowl. Who cares? And then the Super Bowl. And I will be the first one to admit, for reasons that I did not anticipate, I am an absolute biased homer on this particular game. I was not expecting it, but as you can tell by my Boomer Esiason jersey that I've had for far too long, I was born in Cincinnati. The Bengals were my first love. I absolutely died when they lost the Super Bowls in the 80s. And then they went in the tank, and then I got older, and then I got bitter at the Bengals because they stunk forever. Then they won the playoff game, or during that playoff game against the Raiders for the first playoff win in like 30 years. I really kind of got into it, and I have just been eating this up. The kid in me loves it. I'm so happy they're in the game. I'm so happy they don't have to play the 49ers again. They're a 3-point underdog. They were a 7.5-point underdog against Kansas City. They were, I think, a 5-point underdog against the Titans in the divisional round. They beat them. I have picked against them the last 2 weeks, so I'm going to pick against them this time. I don't think they're going to beat the Rams, but I am dying on this one. I really want them to win, but I don't think they're going to, and I've just got to stick with it, mostly to protect my sports heart on this one. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I mean, I think that karma says that the Bengals are on a roll and somehow they're going to find a way to do it. But if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on the Rams. They're at home. I just don't know what they're going to do with Aaron Donald and Von Miller, and I don't know how they're going to cover the receivers. You know, and Eli Apple and those guys have had a good run, but Cooper Kupp is on another level.
Yeah.
Again. But I thought the same thing. I remember tweeting in the first half of the championship game, this game is over. It's going to be
Everybody did. Everybody did. When just you?
It is over.
It was like, this is done.
Somehow the Bengals hung around and survived, and maybe they'll do it again this week. But my money's on the Rams, the same old Rams. I guess they're not the same old Rams anymore. And Matt Stafford will get a chance to win a playoff game, not just a playoff game. He won a couple of playoff games after winning none in Detroit and having to live with all of that. That's one thing that, and as we always bring it back to the Cowboys, Matt has gone all those years, never won a playoff game. Now he wins 3. And we're comparing what he's done this offseason to what Dak has done. Well, Dak is only year 5, 6. Let's not compare Matt to Dak he's year 13 and Dak is year 5 or 6. But it finally happened for him. It can happen for him if you change the right situation and have the right things around you. It's happening for Matt. And I think the Highland Park native Texas guy will finally win a Super Bowl and get that monkey off his back.
I hope you're wrong. I'm not sure if I got cut out there or not, but I hope you're wrong. For Clarence Hill, I'm Mac Engel. Join us next time on Cowboys Overtime.